Once upon a time, in a far village called Lala, there lived a family that was so unlucky when it came to having children. Mr. and Mrs. Tembo was their name. Mr. Tembo was such a patient and loving man to his wife, who seemed to have had a closed womb for such a long time. On the other hand, Mrs. Tembo was such a charming, beautiful and kind woman. She shared everything she had, even when she didn't have it in plenty, and the news about her kindness spread all over the village, and she was loved by many. Every single night she would coil in bed and sobbed silently, praying to God, "God, please remember me with a child." Her husband, on the other hand, had been told so many things as to wife had not given him children for such a long time, but decided to turn deaf to them. One morning his wife woke up vomiting and with a bloated stomach. She was so weak, and he decided to run and go and find the herbalist to come and check out his wife. When the herbalist arrived, he could not tell what was wrong with Mrs. Tembo, but instead he gave Mrs. Tembo some herbs to help relieve the pain and promised to come back to check on her. Mrs. Tembo was bedridden for such a long time, and so Mr. Tembo was forced to do all the house chores and also look after his wife at the same time. 3 months passed on, and for the first time Mrs. Tembo felt something move in her belly. She smiled and whispered a prayer. "God, let it be a baby." She kept the news to herself, but 6 months down the line, her tummy could not be hidden anymore. She could no longer hide the fact that she was pregnant. Her husband had noticed a protruding belly, and all he did was just smile. Months passed, and finally Mrs. Tembo put to bed a very beautiful baby girl. Many years later, the news about Soma, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Tembo, flew all over the village, and many people wanted to marry her. One morning, as Mr. Tembo was herding his cattle, a poisonous snake bit his leg, and its wound became very smelly, and the entire leg began rotting. Mrs. Tembo called many numerous herbalists, and all of them confessed the only cure to his husband's wound was the nails of an ogre who lived deep down in the village. Mrs. Tembo cried. She could not believe what she had had. She was wondering how she would be able to get the nails. But all of a sudden, the daughter bumped in and said, "Mommy, I will get the nails from the ogre." Mrs. Tembo was reluctant, but looking at her dying husband, she let her daughter go. Soma embarked on a long journey, passing through many villages into the thick forest, and after many nights of walking, she came across the ogre's land. And because she was exhausted, she fainted right in front of one of the ogre who had spotted her. After a few hours, she woke up to the sight of one huge ogre looking at her. She screamed, but the ogre put one of his fingers on his mouth, and he then gave her a bowl of vegetable soup to drink. Soma stared at the ogre for a long time. He seemed different from all the stories she had heard. The ogre was so calm. His voice was not thunderous like other ogres. She finished the bowl of soup, and the ogre asked, "What do you want?" Soma stammered for a minute. I want your nails. My father is dying, and your nails are the only things that can save him." The ogre sighed as he bent down to look at Soma. "I'll give you my nails, but only on one condition. If you only help me remove the thorn stuck at the middle of my back." Soma quickly nodded her head in agreement, and she climbed up at the back of the ogre, and using her teeth, she pulled out a huge thorn that had been stuck on the ogre's back for a very long time. The ogre groaned in so much pain, but then for the first time in so many years, it felt relieved from the one back pain that he had had. The ogre then gave Soma the nails as he had promised. But as he stretched out his hand to give Summer the nails, the ogre turned into a very handsome young man. His voice was now calmer and his looks were quite admirable. Summer could not believe her eyes. She quickly took the nails and ran off quickly to his father's village. She could not believe what she had seen and experienced back in the village. She ran and ran and ran until she got home. When she got home, she gave her mother the nails and she quickly burnt them and turned them into ashes. She then let them cool and then spread them on the husband's wounded leg. After many days, the husband got well. Summer, on the other hand, was lost in deep thoughts. She could not forget about the handsome young man he had left deep down in the village. She slept, she walked, she did everything, and all she could do was think about the young man. One day this man appeared in their village. He asked for Summer's hand in marriage, and Summer quickly agreed, and of course they got married and lived happily ever after. I hope this story has taught you something, and if you've enjoyed it, please remember to hit the subscribe button, give it a like, share it, and let's meet next time on Wonder Tales by Julian.